Mhm.
Looks like we're live now.
Yeah, we're live now.
Right on. Second episode of the year.
Yeah,
Conversation from the underground. Um, my turn to start it off. Y'all know how it is
yeah.
by now. Hopefully,
Yep.
just kind of in here, have a nice little conversation, and then let the chips fall where they may in terms of what the topic is. And we end with a quote that maybe sums up what we do. So what's going on, my man? How you been?
Been good, man. We got that first week out of the way. Um, you know, you see a lot of like anxious uh, looks
Mm,
because students they find out what they got themselves involved in. I talk to my students about as to what they signed up for, why they signed up. Let's be honest, like most of the students are not history majors.
right.
Everyone there is taking the class because it's a required course. And so, this is not a priority per se for many of them. Now, if they get something out of it, that'd be great. But they're very anxious, especially when they hear, oh, we don't need Scantron up in here. No, we do not. You will write down everything and you will be required to express yourself in written form to demonstrate your understanding of the information. And if you can't do that, you know, then then you'll need help. But that's why I'm here to help you. I'm not trying to scare them, but definitely a lot of them were anxious that first week for sure. We're dealing with a different generation of kids or
Mm,
students, is what I should say. We don't have the luxury of just having a university crew, which is primarily like 18 to 22 at best. We deal with students that are, this might be their third time, their third stab at it. We have some students that are like, yo, I'm 65 years old. I'm just trying to see what's up. We got dual credit students, early college, high school students. And then, of course, the 20s, the 30s, we get it all.
yeah.
And, but, the goal is never to scare them. And the reality is just to make them aware, this is what I expect. And if you're cool, then let's be cool. And if you ain't, you can drive. Go
Yeah,
see somebody else.
it's a good purpose behind those expectations that I think may be worth getting into here in a little bit. But real talk, I get nervous before the start of every semester still, and this time it kind of reminds me of that the second Goody Mob album, Big Gift says 4 records deep and I still get stage fright. It just right before this time was different. Like usually maybe like days before, sometimes I'm kind of like I'll get a little butterflies. This time I kind of forgot that it was first day, and it was only like before I went to sleep that I had to lecture the next day that I felt a little bit of nervousness. Of course, my nervousness is different than a lot of theirs. When you're in a different position, different perspectives, the nerves do different things. But I see those
For
nerves
sure.
in my students a lot too, sort of like shock maybe at the beginning sometimes, um like taken aback, maybe not shock, maybe taken aback. Some students, a lot of students come in there and they don't really know what to expect. They don't know much about um being taught history from a perspective of someone who is deeply involved in wanting you to know uh that field, right?
Mm,
um and because when I walk in there, I tell my students, we're basically my goals for you this semester are threefold. I want to teach you some history. I want to teach you what a historian is and what history is, and I want to teach you how to be successful in college, right? um,
mm,
and those three goals. I'm not just here for a paycheck. Like I believe in those goals. I tailor my class to achieve those objectives and lay out how you can be successful if you follow or pay attention or get serious about it. Yeah, it is harder when you set up your courses the way you and I set our courses up, but you get a lot more out of it in the end, right? You don't, you end up taking this class without, you came in here maybe to check off a box, but when you got out, things are a lot different. You see things maybe a little bit differently.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely those are my hopes that they're coming in thinking that this is this is just one checkpoint or one stop along their journey. And don't get me
Right.
wrong, I don't want anybody to switch majors per se. And I've had some that did. At the end of the day, I just hope that my students find some relevancy
Mm.
regarding the study of history. At a lot, a lot of times, like, how does this affect me? How does this benefit me? Is the general attitude towards anything we do. I'll sit in professional development right next to you, talking about what's this got to do with me?
Mm.
In our so-called higher learning or whatever. But
Right.
at the end of the day, just trying to make sure that the students see some relevance to their effort. Because heaven forbid they put forth all this effort and there's no bearing on their grade, or there's no bearing on how they see things differently, or maybe willing to perceive things differently. If they see value in it. But I will say this: I've had students I'm walking into, former students, and they're like, and they have different instructors now, and they look at me and I look at them and I go, "So what's up?" And like, and I go, "Oh, see, now you see. Okay, good. Now you know. Now you
Yeah.
know. You should have waited." But no, all right, go ahead and get the class over with. Now look at you. And so teach their own on that.
Yeah,
But
there's these two things where I see as a college professor. On the one hand, you can be like exciting and interesting, uh, and then or you can be boring. But then there's this other vein where it's, you can be easy or you can be hard or you can be somewhere in between. And there's like, there may be like really interesting and easy. There may be boring and easy. There may be boring and hard, or there may be interesting and hard. Um, and like what, you know, it's difficult to get that right balance in your life as a student when you're thinking about what you're going to study in a semester and why. Um, but I would say you should always try to strive to achieve that, interesting and difficult. Um, because if it's interesting, it'll make the difficulty more bearable.
right.
Um, it'll increase your striving to achieve those goals. Um, and you'll be better off at it, man. That's one of the key things I try to tell these students. We're not here to just tell you certain information. We're here to kind of teach you a little bit about the process of thinking. Why is it important to think? Why is it important to invest time in learning material and
Yeah.
content? Um,
I mean, I
just
tell my students all the time, like, yo, anything you get easy can be lost easy.
hmm for sure.
Yo, you got that grade easy? Well, then you can lose that grade easy.
hmm
And most of the things that you get easy usually aren't of value. Like I take pride in the things that were hard to obtain that ultimately I got. You know what I'm
hmm
saying? If everybody got a PhD, well then, what's so cool about it now?
Right.
If everybody's getting them, you know what I'm saying? Now,
You
don't
know,
get me
and
wrong, I don't have
that's a
one,
great
but
point, man, because that makes me think about this whole idea of success and achievement and how we're supposed to kind of promote student success. But what is student success? Is student success 60% of the class getting A's like you got at Trinity River, or 96% of the class at the early college high school getting A's? Are you measuring it just by some kind of letter that your data shows increased more? Um,
Mhm.
if that's what you measure in success by, well, you know, those that success is ephemeral. It's not. It's going to go
Yeah.
away. Like you,
Unfortunately,
living
yeah,
easy.
that's the problem of higher ed or higher academia at large is that they have no other metric by which to measure success.
Right.
At least they're not even trying to entertain or develop new metrics. So they look at something like, well, how many degrees are you awarding? You know, we were at the convocation and they were bragging about TCC is ninth in the nation or whatever it was in awarding associate's degrees. Okay, well, it just simply means that you're the ninth largest institution, or you're the ninth institution handing out degrees. You
Right.
know, now
To the
don't get
people
me wrong,
that are-
they're not handing them out undeservingly because these students did the work. The students are putting forth the effort and deservingly so. Yo, man, get your associates, man. That's respectable. And for many of our students that we serve, they're the first in their family. Many of them are first in their family to get that. And that's a major accomplishment. That's one step closer to the goals that they're trying to achieve. And that's mad respectable. Yet at the same
I
time,
agree,
to
but
what
we got
to what
right,
level?
exactly. See now, so all of that stuff makes a lot of sense. But the key is, what does it mean to have that degree? And if it means to have that degree, skating through a class without ever having yourself challenged or being expected to perform, then eventually people aren't going to want that degree no more. Eventually, that degree is going to become muddled or weak, or it's going to be like,
Yeah.
so what? Now your associate's degree is going to be equivalent to what a maybe high school degree was, maybe
Mhm.
a master's
Well, I
degree.
mean, we had that guy speak at convocation, the guy that was talking about our new cubicles or our new
Yeah,
student-centered zones, or whatever. And he did bring up something that did seem fairly interesting that I've already noticed that the job market is changing, um, and therefore that alters the value that the students are placing upon higher ed and academia. And what I mean by that is many companies are hiring you right now with no education
right.
and then providing assistance so that you can go back and get your education. So they'll hire you first, give you some assistance, and then you go and complete your associates. You go and complete your bachelor's, and then move up the ladder within the company. Um, Whereas during our generation, the whole um, like I guess pathway, if you will, was graduate high school, apply to college, go to college, get the degree, then get the job. He was making the argument that many major companies are simply just giving you the job and then
Yeah.
training you within.
I mean, my response to that is great. If you found something that you like to do and you apply for that job and they hire you and then give you the training on that job, awesome. That more power to you. People do need to find what they love and pursue it. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't know what they want to do. A lot of people don't know what a major interest is. And that's not changed. College is here for the people who need and want and desire their mind expanded, their capabilities honed,
Yeah,
their
but I agree with that. I agree what you and I think college should be. I'm just saying that I think most students of this generation don't see college like that. They see
unfortunately,
they
I
see
think a lot
college
of
as the place I have to go to,
right to
the
check off
classes I have to take in order to get the job I want, not to
right,
hone skills.
right,
Ain't nobody trying to hone skills at all. They
right.
just want to get an A for the least amount of work possible, which is kind of like all of us too, because yo, I'm trying to get paid the highest amount with the least amount of work as possible. And I think that could be anybody, you know what I'm saying? But like, I think, um, I think most students see it opposite of where you and I would
Yeah,
like it to be.
unfortunate, and there's reasons for that. I think it's been from the top down, tax dollar issues about what's being taught and all these other types of things, bringing more people in to increase more tax dollars so that you get more of it if people pass. And there's all been all these struggles that have kind of been to try to send signals to flip that message, unfortunately. Um, but I would say I would flip it back. Like, if you go buy a car, are you gonna want to like give somebody, $50,000 for a car, and then they're gonna give you a $2,000 car that needs to be fixed and is messed up? And as I mean, are you gonna want to buy a car where you're gonna have to just forget all that? If you immediately have to go around and change the oil, change the transmission, and you spend all this money on it. Uh, no, you're gonna want to invest and give money to get the best product that you can receive for your dollar. And somewhere down the line, we see a disconnect, unfortunately, with look, I'm paying for this college. You should want to receive the best for your money that you possibly can buy, or else you're getting ripped off. If you want the best for your money, if you want the best for your investment, being handed out the easy path grade is not the right goal. That's the wrong end if you're really wanting to get what you've put your investment in, right? And I'm always trying to tell people, if you put something in, man, try to get, you know, you want to get that investment. You want to double up, triple up.
Right.
You want to be investing in something you're about to lose. You need some kind of response, whether it be money or whatever. But these skills, what I try to tell these students, these skills are important. Learning to read, write, and think is going to be important wherever you go, whatever you do, right? Wherever you go, whatever you do. And if you found a job, like Home Dude was talking about in his speech that we had to go watch when I could have been doing a lot of other more productive work. Um, if dude, if you fit that path, great. Like I said, you found something, but be sure it's what you want to do, because what you don't want to do is like get in something when you're like 18, 19, because they're going to give you a paycheck, and then 6, 7 years down the road, you bored out of your mind, you can't stand this job, you don't want to pick yourself up and go to work because you hate it so badly. And now you're in a situation where you got to start over, where a lot of my students are. And I encourage those students to start over, in fact, because I think it's far better off to start over and find the right path than it is to keep trudging into something that you don't like to do, right? And so I
For
tell my
sure,
students,
but
70 some years to get the best job of his life, and he's loving
yeah,
it
but
better than anything.
many of our students aren't afforded the luxury
Right.
of time to
True.
pick and choose, or start in one direction and be like, hey, yo, that didn't work. Let me pivot. Let me
Right.
go in this direction. Like, because for them, um, time is a luxury that they're not readily afforded. So they're like, yo, I got to make them. And I ain't even gonna front. Like for me, when I went to college, I was like, yo, I don't know how much longer this money's gonna last, my scholarship. So I need to make sure I graduate in 4 years because I don't know if the money's gonna be there. So I need to make sure whatever path I'm on, it's the most expedient one. Like it's the one that's going to ultimately put me in a position to work immediately. As a matter of fact, when I was choosing my major, my first declared major when I was going through, I guess, counseling, right, or advising, like my freshman year, I was an American Studies major. And when I spoke with the advisor, I go, what do you want your major to be? I go, I like history, so I think I want to be American Studies. And then they go, oh, okay. Well, I go, well, what kind of job can I get with that? They goes, well, it sounds like you're gonna have to go and do graduate work. And I go, no, I don't know if I have money for that. Like I gotta make sure that when I graduate, I can get a job right then and there. And then she goes, well, why don't you try education? Because you can still do that work, but at the very least you'll have a certificate and you can do this. And then right then and there, I changed my major. And again, why did I do that? Not because of my interests um, not being aligned with, you know, my desire, but the reality was, yo, my circumstances were like, you got to do something right here, right now. And I think many of our students are in the same boat. They don't have money to play with. They don't have time to think, yo, if I take two steps in this direction, if they happen to be a misstep, that's a lot of time and money that I don't think they can afford.
Absolutely.
Um,
Which is why I think your example speaks to the need to increase support for advising, not taking away offices and turning neighborhoods into things that, you know, uh, or just handing out
right,
grades or just not making them go through the struggle because, we know that without struggle, there's no progress. And without progress, purpose begins to maybe need to be reevaluated. And so, yeah, um, I agree with all of that, 100%. I know that students are struggling sometimes and they have to make decisions on time. But if you are too hasty in your decision because of time and money, you need to realize that there'll be repercussions possibly.
yeah,
You may
oh,
save
for
money
sure.
by getting into something that you didn't really love and have passion for. And then you may find yourself bored. That doesn't mean life's over. Uh, you
Right.
can keep looking forward while you're bored. My pops was driving taxis for a while before he was an Oriental rug dealer, before he was a ice cream truck driver, and then all these other things. And then he finally, when he was 70 years old, got back on the track that he found. Took him that long, but he made it. So
But that also makes me, um, I mean, that also for me explains why so many don't pursue history degrees.
yeah, it's
How
very
is it, or why is it so many people are pursuing in our college nursing degrees, and in some instances, engineering degrees or business degrees, or why do they go in these fields? Because, and the after speaking with many of them, the answer is, well, because I know I can get this job doing that.
yeah.
I can be a pharmacist. I've seen people be pharmacists. I've seen my sister or my cousin be a nurse or a nurse's assistant or something of that nature. It seems something a bit more tangible, which is why you don't have many of them being English majors or writing majors. So
Yeah,
the
they
humanities,
majors
for
right now.
many of our students, the humanities is a pipe dream.
Yeah,
They don't look at it as um, an avenue at which they can enjoy maybe a passion, but at the end of the day, they need ends to meet. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just said, we got to make decisions, and those decisions have consequences. Yo, I don't want to eat Wendy's 4 for $4. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
mhm,
know that's not healthy for me, but my pocket tells me this is what you're eating.
right.
You know, like we don't. I'd imagine many of our students they don't have that luxury.
They don't. I agree. Another aspect there's too. We got to add to it is that many don't also have financial advisors and life coaches to sit down and reflect on the schedule that they keep and
Mm,
what they spend money on and what they invest time in. And you'll find there are pockets within your life that you can make changes. You'll find that eating a crown of broccoli is a hell of a lot cheaper than that Wendy's 4 for $4 meal. It may not taste as good, but
it
there
ain't
are
tasting nowhere near as good.
but there are these different little decisions that we're making on a daily
Sure.
basis that we got to reflect on to see where we can cut corners if there's something we want to to achieve the right way, right? And yeah, of course, it's a struggle, and in fact, to be real, I don't know that given the situation, I could anymore advise someone to become a history major, given how drastically history programs are declining and all these other types of things. It's very difficult. Maybe not history major, but maybe as a profession, trying to become a professor, a history professor, man, it feels like the days are gone. It's like they're trying to eradicate that the professorship, perhaps, maybe in the liberal arts and the humanities seem to be in the most crisis right now, but maybe it's more broadly the whole profession is drastically transforming. And I think at that 50-year anniversary, I gave that community history of the community college speech, uh, and I did a little research at that time, and sort of looked at this pinpointed the end of the 19th century when you started to see a shift. Prior to then, university was a place that you went to expand your mind, to think about things differently, to look at the world in creative manner so that you could move it forward. Great intellectual minds changing things by investigating the past. Um, and then in the late 19th century, this kind of massive new industrialization kind of machine. Um, Many of these economics majors in the United States, there was no graduate schools really in the United States. Most of them went over to Germany and got these PhDs and stuff and came back, and then they built universities, or they became presidents of universities, and they steered money towards researchship and production and things like this. And then by the 1960s, you fast forward pretty deeply, you got the great democratization of people flooding into higher education. And so you got this kind of struggle between what is the purpose? Is the purpose of higher education to get you a better job, or is it to expand your mind? We figured out ways to make kind of like a good blend of both. But it seems like lately, too many students aren't aware of the need to keep those classes that are about honing your skills, expanding your mind, opening up your perspective, broadening the way you see the world functioning and things like that. And that's why we're so important. That's why you can't be one of these teachers running around here, professors running around here, not really pushing students
Right.
really uh, like they should be pushed. Um, Whether it be out of fear that your numbers aren't right because you're going to lose something or whatever. But sometimes we got to believe in ourselves. Like you over here telling me all these things. How can I change my ISLO? Have you ever thought of the fact that maybe I got the path. The path is paved. I'm showing them, and how many of them are going to decide to walk that path. Maybe the path is straight. Maybe it's we need to do something. You over here trying to make it seem like I'm doing something wrong. Like really, you just want people to start passing people through. Um, I don't know what it is, man, but sometimes it takes a little while for it to click. I've had several students who've performed poorly in my class, but it woke up something and then they became great. Um, Sometimes life gets in the way, like you said, and you have to take a loss. Sometimes things happen, and roadblocks get in your way, and you got to move around. Places to figure out ways to get back on the path. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of these students, unfortunately, are not used to taking L's.
Right.
When you pass them along, and they see that with little effort, I can still make a B. With little effort, I can make an A. If and when they, encounter a 42 or a 55, you know, this may seem like the end of the world for many of them because they're not used to experiencing, those type of low grades. And then because of their lack of experience, they respond or react in a not an inappropriate manner, but in a manner that's, obviously um, accompanied with inexperience. It almost be like, this girl broke my heart. Okay, well, relax. This is your first girlfriend.
Right.
Like there's gonna be many more coming down the way, kid. So like
Yeah.
the first time you ever had your heart broken ain't the same as the fifth time or the fourth time or heaven forbid the 10th time. But like, you know, the more L's you take, the more you become aware of how to handle them.
The
You know,
experience.
my very first fist fight wasn't like my 10th fist fight. I'll tell you
Right.
that. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you learn how to take L's. Many of our students are not accustomed to that because they've been lied to. And then when they take a class like mine or yours, and we try to be a little honest, they're taken aback. They're very anxious. They're very worried. Um, one thing I will say about, getting back to the timeline you were stressing regarding higher ed and the greater access that was afforded shortly after the 60s. Um, you know, for me, I looked at the university as a place where people from around the world descended upon one location. And have you ever heard that phrase? Traveling is like the greatest educator.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, all
Certainly.
right. So traveling is one of the best ways to get educated by traveling. Well, the thing about a university is that it compelled people from around the world to travel to that one spot. You didn't need to travel. So, like when I was at Baylor, I didn't need to know necessarily what Sweden was like because I had two students from Sweden
Right.
in the dorm room. I had one student from Nigeria. I had another student from China. I had another, and so people around, and that, of course, people all throughout Texas, California, whatever. And
Right.
people from around the world came to the university, and we broke bread. And so it made college seem like, yo, you may not have to travel as much because this institution affords many people from all walks of life to come together that you may have never experienced before because it's a small town or whatever. And that was a great learning experience. I think with the this digital era, it's, you know, we're more aware and we're more inundated with individuals from around the world with information and perspectives at our fingertips because of technology that um, the the paradigm of learning has forever been altered.
I
Um,
agree
the
with that.
notion the notion of what the university used to be has now forever been altered because of technology, like
Absolutely.
this particular generation.
As is the case about almost everything in the history of the world, as it transforms and transmogrifies and develops through time and adapts or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah, that's
Um,
true, but there are certain moments, like so for example, like yeah, there are always going to be changes, but every so often there's this one change that is game changing.
yeah, for
You know,
sure.
like so don't get me wrong, like oh look, they now have typewriters. Oh, okay, cool. But but you're still using the Dewey Decimal System, you know, and
Mhm.
then access to the internet, game changing.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you could probably go so far as this. I've had some discussions with, uh, Professor or Underground Emeritus Joel Tavanche about the handheld iPhone or whatever you want to, Android, whichever one, smartphone,
Smartphone, smartphone.
may be the most transformative uh, thing, concept in human history. And then we discussed maybe, well, the World Wide Web or something like that. Certainly, certainly. But, the point is, if you have an institution or a concept or an idea or a subject or a field in a era, it must evolve with the devolving technology or it's going to die off. And I would say this reminds me of a quote that David Foster Wallace says in a speech that I always ask my students to listen to called This is Water. He gave this commencement speech to Kent State University um, back several couple decades or more ago. And he um, he starts the speech off by saying there's these two fish swimming in the water, and one fish comes by and says, "How's the water?" And goes by, and the two fish look at each other and like say, "What the hell is water?" And
Mm.
and he then starts talking about, the whole purpose of the speech is to kind of get you to see how oftentimes what may be the most obvious thing in front of you, the most important things, are so difficult for us to sometimes see. Um, and he has this very interesting kind of discussion in there where he says he was upset when he graduated with liberal arts degree because they said, well, I'm not, this teaches you how to think. And he's like, well, considering I even got into this fancy school in the first place, you think I'd already know how to think. Uh, and he says, but there's really not too much bad about that phrase. But if we could add a little bit more to it, it would improve. Which he says, it's less about teaching you how to think than more and more what to think about. And that brings me to that "this is water" sort of thing, which makes me think, we have this kind of default setting that we operate on in our life, which he mentions too in that speech. This default setting for us would be like our cultural lens, the things that, we even tell people in our society to follow your gut or follow your heart instead of, the logic in your mind, instead of something that pumps blood. You want maybe think with your mind. But what we say that we really mean default setting, this emotional response that we've kind of, our lived experiences have made us think a certain way. And the value of a liberal arts education sometimes is to try to get you to go beyond that, is to try to push that envelope and look at things from different perspectives, which is what he means, I think, when he says what to think about. Um, Sometimes you got to think about the structures that make us think that we know these things, and it happens in every society, every era, where there's people who are overconfident and just thinking about things they don't even realize the most basic answers are right in front of their face. Sometimes it reminds me of the brilliant Nazis who had great IQs but never saw the brutality and just some of the human experiments that they were doing on people. Like, if you don't reflect on what got you to this area, what brought you here, what historical factors contributed to what you think is normal and you think is okay, then you're going to end up exploding, um, or combusting, or causing such a big catastrophic shift in something that's going to need to have a catastrophic thing come back to repair it. Um, you don't know what ramifications you're contributing to when you devalue humanity's discipline. Um, that, I think, is the biggest problem. And part of devaluing humanities education is just handing out grades like candy and not
Right.
expecting anything from students, because you're not forcing them into really meaningful time periods to reflect on things.
I mean, that's crazy tough, what you just said, because it's one thing for a student not to value a discipline. It's another thing when the institution itself
Sure.
is devaluing um, itself, and that's almost like burning the candle from both ends, dude.
Hmm.
And it seems like we're treading water to a degree.
Hmm.
I know we're not, you know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, you know, I'm gonna carry my sword. Um, but it's definitely tough to know that students are seeing limited value in our field or in humanities at large. And then on top of that, the institution of higher ed or academia at large is um, devaluing. So those are two separate things, right? Like I don't see value in this. That's different from devaluing. In order to devalue, you have to acknowledge that value does exist, but they can diminish that. When I say they, I'm talking about obviously the institution itself, right? And they don't even know it. Like, yo, you're burning the house down I don't want to say they're burning the house down, but it's like the very things that they're doing are diminishing the very things that allow us to thrive.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
see it.
even see it.
A good maybe term would be purging. It's like a sense of a purge where they are maybe motivated by self-preservation and feel like they can cut corners on things, purge things and replace them with other things, keep passing people over so we can still have, asses in the seats and papers being checked off. Maybe that's what some people think is the solution or something. I don't know. I really don't know. It's bothersome though. It's worrisome. Uh,
Well,
and
ultimately, we and and here's one thing that I've noticed. It's like at the end of the day, what are we gonna do? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what can we do to ensure, or at the very least, try to reduce the severity of this leak? If there's a leak in the boat, and now it seems like there's two leaks in the boat.
yeah,
One from the students themselves, who see no value in, who may not see value. I mean, but my thing is like, yo, if they saw value, they would be majors. Or if they saw value, they would pursue a degree in the humanities. But
no,
how is it, or
I
why
think
is it many
one
of
of
them are pursuing
the
degrees in like nursing, STEM?
yeah.
And I'm knocking the shit. You know
Oh
what I'm
no,
saying?
of course. I mean, there's a reason
There's
that,
value in that
right?
too.
We talk about that in our history 1302 class when I get to the Cold War, like the massive funding that increased in STEM studies in order to keep up with the Soviet Union in the Cold War.
Mhm.
Increased arms race and the space race and the technological innovations and fear of the other, which shows how cultural intentions can oftentimes, or social aspects can significantly alter and influence cultural uh, entities in a society. Um, you know, uh, one of the things I had an email conversation with one of my professors about this a couple weeks ago, about the sad state of affair of humanities. And one of the things I thought of was, all this money that you people make us spend to go to these conferences and pay these $200 fees to go and present the paper that half the people sit there and read boringly off of, while all these people are just, all in this conference all weekend. You know how much money y'all doing with all this stuff? Maybe we should reallocate our funds into focusing on how to increase awareness about the value of education, how to promote
I
inspiration.
shit, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm
one thing I
irony.
stress though is that we don't refer to it as defund
Mm,
academia.
mhm,
Uh, you know,
mm, mm.
calling we saw the era of that with defund the police, when in reality it was just, yo, let's reallocate our resources.
Right.
Um, However, when people hear it as defund this or defund that, then they think that, oh, you want to eliminate. And like, and yo, we're not trying to eliminate academia, but I do think that we could probably better allocate funds
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
towards more. Um, and here's the problem though. It's like, uh, the faculty ultimately have to make those type of decisions. The problem is we have administration making those decisions.
Right.
Um, and at the end of the day, no disrespect, but like the boot on the ground knows a bit more
Yeah.
as to the logistics and the realities of the task at hand. And if faculty are saying this, then that's probably what we should probably be doing. But we know they don't listen, or maybe we're not arguing appropriately. But I think we definitely could reevaluate spending. That's for sure.
Yeah. Culturally, as a discipline, it's time. mean, you can do these little 10-minute presentations over your topic on the Zoom now for free. So let's take the money where everybody's flying, to a hotel in New
Yeah,
Orleans
yeah.
so that they can
Yep.
spend the whole weekend going to conference rooms where everybody's talking about these
I sure
things.
as hell ain't trying to watch no 10-minute Zoom where you read off your paper, dog.
Right. But
Some cats, that's all they know how to do is read off of a paper.
right. Which means maybe there is a shift that needs to be a shift more towards inspiration and enthusiasm to help increase value, which means, there's going to be a lot of change, man. We're in this new era, like you said, and like me and Hoel have talked about, technology is making a tremendous shift, and there's a lot of adaptability that needs to take place. I do not disagree with the chancellor in the fact that we have to embrace change, right? But we also need to really kind of reflect on what it is that we're changing to and why we're changing to it and what
Mm-hmm.
we do and what's our purpose of that change. Is the purpose of that change to just keep feeding into the desire to increase grades until 100% A's and this is pass or fail, or just
Yeah.
or nobody can even write a paragraph by the time they graduate? You know, speaking of history majors, I'm loving this World Civ online class. I got more history majors in that class than I've ever had in my life. Many of them are already
Mm.
like a couple students at UTA, a couple students at UNT taking it online, a couple students, one dude's in Germany. It's really interesting. And I asked them this question about in their orientation discussion board, like, what do you think history is?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about you that you want us to know. And I just got finished reading them all. And after that, I wrote a little 3-minute video response and put it up to it was like, in this, you all told me all this stuff about you that you wanted me to know, right? But imagine if you were like in a private conversation with, a therapist or something, and they were asking you to tell them something about you that turned your life into a bad situation, or you're trying to fix a problem or something like that. And imagine if I took all your answers there and I went to this discussion board and I pretended like I was you and I used that to answer all of these questions. How much do you think the world or the perception of the class that's reading this would think about you differently? That's a good example of the subjective realm of history. The one who's in control of disseminating the information about you has a tremendous influence on what I think about you, right? And so you have to think about history in that way. When you look at the past, we're essentially doing that. We're taking information about them and we're trying to tell their story.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to be careful with that. And if we understand how we're unpacking all of these things, then it can maybe send us messages about ourselves and how we act and how we should act and how we should move forward. And if it's taken seriously, you can improve in that direction. And one of the things I'm telling them, man, is like, yo, if you look at some of these discussion board responses, one of them I counted, it was like over 1,100 words I responded to in one response to somebody's thing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, yo, I got people turning in OTEs at 250 words, and I'm dropping 1,200 words on a discussion board response to a student. Like, look at where the
There's a disconnect, that's for sure.
disconnect is, man. Like, put the time in, put the work in, and you're going to be a better person about it. Like, earn those grades, demand difficulty to some degree. Like, I'm not trying to burn all of you at the stake and flunk everyone. I don't get off on that. That don't make me happy at all. The goal is to push your mind and
Mm-hmm.
and get you aware and focused and stronger in every realm of your life because you're focusing on my class seriously.
At the end of the day, the way you go about your course is, akin to how I carry my courses. But man, I think we need to do something different. Not the way we instruct. We're killing that. But we might have to do something different in regards to putting ourselves out there so that way we can intercept or um, expose more students to the potential and value of a humanities degree, humanities courses, history at large, like but outside of our classroom. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's something, and even if we set up like a booth, you know what I'm saying?
Certainly.
In the commons or wherever it is, where me and you just link up and we just and
Well, you know
and
what I like this nonprofit organization stuff too, which I feel like has funds that can maybe we can steer towards throwing in directions for having events like that are paid for, right?
Mhm.
That's that funding, and that's that issue that we got to like think more about in this nonprofit world, because of course, with the education world as well. I like that idea of conversations for history. We're sitting down. I'd like to go to that makerspace room and do this that we're doing right here and have it open to anybody who wants to come and listen in
Right,
live. Eventually,
live,
uh,
right.
these types of expansions of things are needed. And it can't just be you and me either. I mean, it's got to, people's got to move. It's got to be people doing these things on their own. It's got to be people caring and realizing that it needs to be done first off, because there's still a lot of people out there who are like, whatever, man, I just go and get through the chapter, and students will do what they want to do, give them grades, and continue to get my paycheck and go home and watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians or whatever it is
Yeah.
that you do out there.
Well, in the first week of class, we're trying to, you ask your students, what do you think history is to you? And you hit it right on the head, man. It's like as professors or instructors or whatever, our job is to tell the story of others, and we have to be very careful about how we craft and narrate that story, that we
Mm,
give proper explanation and identification of communities, individuals, movements. And it leads me back to that notion again, like, man, identity is important.
sure.
Like, and that's how it could be resonant. That's how it could resonate to people right now. Is as I think more than ever before, we're in a moment that's not too lost on us because we could have experienced it in the 1920s. But many young people right now are struggling with identity.
Definitely.
And if they begin to see how easy it is for people to manipulate narratives that diminish certain identities, elevate other identities, if they see how that's possible, then they'll say to themselves, "Oh, then I need to make sure
Hmm.
that I'm identifying myself as this before I let you identify me as something else."
Yeah, for real.
And then that would give them the, maybe, I don't know, the the motivation to say then that I do need to pursue or be more invested in the humanities so that I am capable of controlling that narrative, controlling that identity.
Man, that's why I tell students all the time. Yeah, I know that y'all, the vast majority of you aren't going to become history majors, but really what I say oftentimes is I understand that most of you aren't aware of the superiority of the discipline of history. I understand that you have a light of the superior discipline. Right after I talk about bias and subjectivity, I'm not biased or anything, but history just happens to be the most superior discipline of
Mm.
all. Um, why? Well, because there's a history of everything. Everything has a history. You tell me what you want to study, I'll tell you the history of it. You want to be good at that, whatever it is you want to study, you best know the history of it. You best know a little bit about, and if you want to know the history about that, you're going to have to know something about history, because you ain't going to really know the history about that if you don't know what history is and you ain't investigating the history of that properly the way it needs to be investigated. And if you ain't investigating about what business failed, yet you over here talking about I got an A in my business degree. Well, good luck with moving forward and being successful in your business. If you ain't seen what nurses done messed up before, then how are you going to be able to know that you shouldn't stab somebody in their arm and bloodlet them anymore, or drill holes in their head when you think they're insane? Like, what do you think we don't do that for anymore? History, fool. That's why history is the most superior discipline at all, and you need to take
Mm.
heed of it, right? Man,
No, I saw something that was like, yo, if I wanted history to be easy, I'd just call myself a sociologist. But no,
oh,
no disrespect to anybody in the sociology field. I'm just saying that's all.
buddy, I like it. Man, we close, man, aren't we?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got a
we're
pretty
about that
good.
time.
You're welcome to throw yours in too, but it stands out. I think it comes from a book called Homo Deus by
Mhm.
Yuval Harari. He's a world historian. Um, he says the best reason to learn history is not in order to predict the future, but to free yourself of the past and imagine alternative destinies. It kind of really hit me when you were talking about identity just now, and how important history is for that, because studying it may free you up to see these alternative opportunities.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people could take that quote and run with it in a
Yeah.
positive sense, because I hear a lot of young people who want to be freed up. Like there's something going on. You know,
Mm,
as more and more young people are exploring um, what mental health is, what their emotional health is. Uh, you know, everyone carries a certain amount of weight, and anytime we can free some of that up, you know, there's value to that. So, and if we could somehow parlay that history could free up some of that weight, uh,
yeah,
makes sense to me.
yeah,
If we can sell it as such.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I got for that.
Well, I guess we got a late night tonight. We got classes in the morning. What time you got class tomorrow?
9:30. That's a little early for me.
Again, the dedication, right? When things go wrong, when things jump in the pathway of our goal of achieving this every night, what happens? We shift some things around, and now we're up late all night to get it done. But that should itself speak something, maybe to the need to adapt, right, to your situations.
Yep. At the
But
end of the day, we got to get it done.
right, till next week.
All right, man. Then we'll just
Peace.
call it as such.
Right on.
All right. Take it easy.
Peace.